Men, can you depend on them? It's like Milo was supposed to be here last week, and then he goes to Dallas. I mean, gosh. And okay, if any of you watched him on The Blaze, you'll know he I would have built that building with him, right? So I'm a little, I'm frustrated this week, and you know what happens when women, we get frustrated. We go for the spell books, right? And we start looking up. Oh, look, actually, I I clearly have been writing stanzas longer than I remember. I didn't even remember this. Ecce homo cried the what as the you know women on our own are very, very dangerous. And I had actually, because in fact Milo and I have been talking about this for a long time. It's like, what do you do with strong women? What do you do with those strong women who want to have powers and magics and such? And well, and then of course I have to, because I'm upset that I didn't get to have the conversation that I had planned for last week, and I spent all weekend reading about witches and more. And we need to talk about what makes women strong. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. So, doomsday. The world came to a screeching halt. The cavalcade drove by, but no one cared to wave a flag. It makes you wonder why. I know I'm meant to care a lot, but somehow I just can't. The theater in Washington is so much fancy pants.
Fancy
Oh my
pants.
gosh, it's like spells. It's like spells. So I can't read my own handwriting, right?
You
Something,
get an A
something.
plus for
It's
using fancy
we
pants. Go on.
fancy pants, right? Okay, so these notebooks, and I was thinking about this because Milo always teases me about my notebooks, and I'm like proud. I have this entire stack of these, and every time he sees me, which is moderately regularly, guys. So just so you know, I have a different one because it takes me about a year to fill each one, maybe. So I see him once a year. And I love how witchy they are. This is the only one that I managed to
Mhm.
get with like actual like gemstones in it. The others are all sort of leather
Oh,
and stuff. But this one is from October 15th, 2020 to June 13th, 2021, which means these are all notes from when I was doing those blog posts on January 6th,
yeah.
2021, right? So this is what women do with our magic, right? What should we do? So are women powerful?
Yes, but maybe not in the ways they'd like to be.
Well, okay, so in my intro I was talking about stuff I've been reading, and in fact, and this is, guys, okay, one, it's showing off, right? Because I have notebooks, and which I'll have to just throw down on the ground. That we are in our work in Draco Alchemicus nearing the end of Act 3, which is the market. And basically by now we think we're writing in like real time of myth, because the things that we're bringing together at the end of this act are happening in real time right now with rockets and networks and the everybody writing in Substack this week seems to be saying, it's like, how does it feel like everything's in such chaos? And of course it's because we're in the transition from one administration to the other. But there's also a feeling that, I mean, certainly we are getting in the Dragon Common Room and in the writing that we're doing, that strange magics are at play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It feels like that. It feels like a real transition, but not just from one president's term to another.
No.
It feels like there's something else going on. Feels like a real small part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a feeling. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but there seems to be this kind of hum, around the world, where people's emotions seem to be sinking. It's really kind of a strange feeling, almost magic.
Well, certainly I spent last weekend disappointed that my student didn't show up. But also I think just feeling a lot of things have come to an end and we're not sure what's going to happen now. Many of us are highly suspicious of how things are going to play out. Yes. I do know, and this is of course coming up in our writing, but it's constantly always there, that hum of the relation between the sexes. For sure. And the sort of, like, think, if just off the top of our head, think of how many of the stories right now are about this. It's not just sexual tension. It's this tension between the sexes, which is, it's
competition.
Yeah.
It's a natural competition.
Yeah.
That's being forced upon men and women, I think.
Well, so I was also, I mean, tonight's stream is like the third of the trilogy. You have to watch that other stream that I did Wednesday to get all 3 parts. So last week when I was supposed to be talking to Milo, I'm going to keep hammering that in. He's going to show up one day.
Excuse me.
Stop.
No, I swear it's a cold. I swear.
Yeah, right. and tomorrow they're I guess reopening, or do they rededicate? They can't rededicate the church. They're reopening the cathedral tomorrow, right?
I think they have to reconsecrate it, don't they?
I don't know. I
don't know either, because nobody's telling us how it burnt down, although we all suspect that it wasn't a faulty wire or a cigarette.
Would that mean reconsecrate? Okay, that's a whole nother stream. I didn't even think about that. But the last week I was thinking, I was trying to set up a conversation about what religion is. And then I was on Navigating Patterns midweek this last week. And what he wanted to talk about, what Mark wanted to talk about, Lefebvre, he wanted to talk about the intimacy crisis, which I thought what he meant was sexuality, but afterwards I was thinking, maybe he means something else, right? He means because he said men seem to be in this meaning crisis, which I think fit with what I was talking about last week on Friday. And that women are in an intimacy crisis. And it's like, okay, so from my perspective, and I was thinking about that from some of the prep I'd done for talking with Milo, who didn't show up. And you're coughing again. See, it's gonna be every time I'm gonna say, it's like the magic spell Milo and Casey. See. Do you need for real? Do you
like whooping cough or something?
Do you need to get some water? Do you need to go get some water?
I got some tea. It's good. Yeah, it's just gonna keep happening. It's
every time I say Milo.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Okay, no. So if we were, okay, you don't even pretend to be a witch. I, have my magic, Trinity books, right, and stuff like that. Well, the thing is, I do wonder. It's like wizardry. Talk about crisis of meaning, right? Wizardry is what men are tempted by.
Are they?
Yes, I think so, because
I think they're more simple creatures than that. I think women are far more attracted to the idea of witchcraft. That's why the warlock is more rare in myth than the witch.
Okay, well, what I was going with was Discworld, because in Discworld the men are wizards and the women are witches, and there's occasional like the very first witch story is when there's a girl who has a wizard staff, and so the problem is getting her into the university. But the university is all men and they're wizards, and wizard magic is very technical. It's basically tech, right? And also that they are they're always about to destroy the fabric of the universe one way or the other.
By accident? It's like nuclear physics or something?
Yes.
Didn't mean to
Basically,
do that.
just like, could happen now if the
Yeah.
men, I don't know. I rather hope
Somewhere in the
Mr.
bowels of
Putin doesn't
Switzerland
need to be
right now.
tempted. Yeah, right, exactly. Precisely. Right. So the men
Yeah.
are tempted by that kind of affecting of the networks and the powers, whereas women,
Creation.
yeah, women with the witches in the Discworld are in the village, right? The proper number of witches for a coven is one. Because they can't get along, right? It's
Oh, I
supposed,
was going to say, I thought it was three,
well, it's
but
supposed to be three. And so you have, I mean, the joke is you have Nanny Weatherwax, Granny Weatherwax, Nanny Og, and Margaret, and then Margaret's replaced by, uh, oh God, I forgot her name, Agnes. And the two older witches are always hazing the younger witch. Speaking of Milo this week, in his witchy
just
hat,
kidding.
his Texan hat. Oh well, Milo plays a lot of energies, that's for sure. And they have to deal with things, headology, as Granny says, right? They deal with how people think, psychology, and stories, right? The witches are all about storytelling.
Yeah.
But their powers all have to do with, midwifery and sitting with the dead. So occasionally Granny gets to like play chess or cripple Mr. Onion, not chess. She doesn't play chess. She plays cards with Death, who in the Discworld is, of course, a skeleton, which she can see because she's got that ability to pass between the life and death, the sort of, yeah. So what I've been thinking about, and this is to a degree topical to our problem of what women are. What is the appeal? And because I, have to do my history reading by reading Deborah Harkness's. Well, we've read for Drake Alchemicus her book on John Dee and the angels, which she's an actual scholar, exactly my age. Yes, I'm dying of jealousy. Because oh my gosh, it's like I just want the sets and the music and the clothes and the okay, the money for our illustrations would be great, guys, when we're gonna still have to like beg for money for our beautiful Elizabethan illustrations. But
they're so pretty.
That heart, we promise you, they are coming. Aisha is working very, very hard on our illustrations. They're going to be amazing. This is Act 2, right? And then it's layers, right? We've got so many parts of our story come out in layers. But the way Harkness plays with the witchcraft, and of course, and these books sell millions, and they've been translated into gazillion languages, 36 according to the last time the last time I jealously checked. And so I've been, thinking about it as it's a witch love story with a vampire, and it's clearly a bookish woman's fantasy because she's a scholar like me, and the whole story revolves around a manuscript which the main character Diana finds and then can't find again in the Bodleian Library manuscript reading room, Duke Humphreys, which I've worked in. Right. So this is a straight up wish fulfillment for me on absolutely every level, including the one that we're, of course, working with in Draco Alchemicus.
I got to get them now. I'm sorry, you've sold it to me.
Well, no, but I mean, come on. It's just irritating me because it's something tapping into what women want for sure.
Yeah.
Because it sold a lot of copies and that it's good.
Bookish women buy a book about bookish women.
Bookish women buy a book about bookish women falling in love with men who love the fact that they're bookish women.
Jane Austen.
It's Jane Austen.
Yeah, which every good, good best-selling, romance series is. They're duplicating Jane Austen like every time.
Pretty much. I mean, we still promise. Fat's keeping a list for us now of all the things that we keep promising we're going to do, and it's basically all the romances, right? Shrek and Bridgerton, right? And
I haven't seen that.
We can do Discovery of Witches formally. I don't know, maybe. The thing is that they're
that would be fun.
They are. We could actually, because we are dealing with some of the same like primary sources that
Yeah.
she pointed us to, because I read her book on John Dee. Yes, that we gave in Act 2, we gave our Elizabeth character a crystal ball, just like John Dee's. And
Yes.
so it is drawn, of course, sitting on John Dee's seal. Okay, so yes, we've been doing our research just like Deborah Harkness did. But there's this, what women want is, I mean, it was a big, we did a whole episode this summer, right, on, why white women liked Harris, and the problem of, and there's that survey that the NORC, I forget what NORC stands for, but it's at the University of Chicago, just did, finding out that the cat ladies really did all over Harris, whereas the cat guys voted for Trump, dog women voted for Trump, and the dog guys voted for Trump. So it was like cat guys, dog people versus the wizards versus the witch. I don't know, right? The witches with their cats, right? And I'm seeing this tension playing out a lot with things like Pete Hegseth's nomination for because the way they're trying to derail it, right, which includes Joni
Bring the
Ernst.
women into it.
Joni Ernst apparently wants to be the head of our Department of Events. Please, no, ma'am.
No,
right.
no,
It's like
no more. Sorry, no more women doing this. Stop it. Just stop it.
Right? No, but this is the problem. It's like Hegseth. I mean, I love that everybody's, okay, one, he clearly got his shirt off so that we have all these photographs of him with all of his tattoos. That people keep posting all his tattoos and saying, look, this is a man who has served in the military, who can, command men in noble projects. He's been doing stuff on education. He's done a lot with the care of veterans. And yet the fact that, yes, okay, he's clearly behaving like Vox would describe as an alpha, unfortunately, for those of us ladies who can't get alphas. So you have to imagine them as vampires.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I would only do that in imagination, because frankly, it just sounds like a lot of work.
Well,
it sounds like a terrible lot of work, getting an alpha and keeping him.
Well, ultimately you can't. I mean, this is,
No.
I think this is,
you have to be Melania Trump, which I'm clearly not.
Yeah, but she's number 3, right? So she got him in his older age. She didn't, the first 2 didn't get to keep him.
Middle age.
Yeah, but right. And,
well, that's that point, it's a lot of work, right?
Yeah. And I guess Hegseth, he's had 3 wives and children with, I know how many, Elon Musk has 12 children with how many mothers?
12 living children. I think he actually has 13, because his first child died in infancy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very sad.
Wow.
Yeah, it was SIDS, I think.
Ooh,
yeah.
Vaccine. Ooh.
Maybe.
Anyway, lots of kids with many women. This being therefore a problem of what should the relations between men and women be. And I say, to start with the witchery, right? The witchcraft model is interesting, because like tonight in our writing, the topic came up that women are often claiming to be witches now. And of course there was the thing about the witches were trying to cast spells on Trump and they were bouncing off of him. So it didn't work. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. We've got a more powerful woman praying, what they might call spellcasting, praying for him. So
well,
clearly.
Indeed. But I do, there's feel a lot of this. It is all of this sexual. It's just sexual energy, which I maybe springing out of everybody finally acknowledging that there is such a thing as sex again, as opposed to gender identities and unicorn hair and stuff like that. I actually don't mind the unicorn hair. I don't think it looks good on most people, but I get the. What
is the unicorn hair?
All the different colors.
That's been around for ages. We're 80s chicks. Come on.
Yeah. See, no, this is the Gen X. It's like, What? You got tattoos? Okay, fine. What? How many piercings? Really?
And
You
yeah,
expect me to
is that
be
it?
worried about
Yeah,
that? Yes. Your hair is what color? Who cares?
nobody
But,
cares.
but we do care about something else, right? Which is the other thing that we Gen Xers are very happy about, that Donald Trump has helped make not happen anymore, which is, of course, the thing that Harris ran on, which is killing your children.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, yeah. Is that the only reason single cat ladies were identifying with her?
It,
That seemed to be the only issue it was. And it was all about power,
yeah.
that power.
But I'd say to think about all of this, it's like, guys, you think I've been wandering around. I have an actual goal, because you know I do, because my weave always has a point. These women, the cat lady, I mean, so the cat ladies, single, Roald Dahl could write this, right? Hate
Plug in
children.
here.
What are you doing?
No, I'm sorry, I had to plug in there.
Okay, so the cat. I think the cat. I mean, clearly men can like cats and it's innocent, right? So the cat. There's something problem with the cat ladies. They hate children, and they hate the idea, apparently, of other people having children, and so they want to make sure that all. I don't know. It's like it's okay. So this is the startling thing that I found out when I was prepping for the conversation on religion that is ongoing with Milo. Because I was thinking, it's like, what for most people does religion mean? It's like and what I tried to talk about last week is we have this layering of the term through from the Enlightenment through the 19th century into the present, but there's this sort of usual sort of fog around the idea that, well, shouldn't your religion just be worshiping whoever you like, right? We can worship the goddess, and that'll be all fine and dandy.
Well, it's a way of living. Religion is a way of living. It's not just a belief, right? Otherwise, you just call it a belief.
I think people feel like it seems a lot more. It seems a lot stronger than that, rather than just like, oh, this is my hair color and my aesthetic for my clothing. And because, as we know,
it's a moral code.
Goth chicks, are properly, in Notre Dame, wearing veils,
Right.
on their knees, praying to Our Lady for children, right?
Yeah.
So I think I think there's a worship there, and this is the irony. This is why I was wanting to read about in the actual book on witches, right? So this is our vision of witches in the present, which is best-selling novels about, romance, right? Although what's fascinating about it in Harkness's books is that spoiler alert, that they have children, right? The whole point about the story is that the vampire, it's like a mixed marriage problem.
Does a vampire have a child? That's against mythology. But anyway, go on.
And they talk about that, right? But the problem being whether the vampires and the witches and the demons should be able to have children together. So it's a kind of racial sex mixing question.
Or species.
Right? And then there's
Yeah.
there's the big question in the book that's vanished, the Ashmole, what's it, that are they in fact different species, or are they all related?
Oh, I've got to read these books. She's anticipated my every question.
Well, there you go. I mean, she is actually a historian of science, and she has thought through varieties of the problem here. I get so irritated at it's such a wish fulfillment fantasy. Stop it. Stop. I mean, in fact, stop reading my mind about what? No, I can't. I'm embarrassed that this no, stop. I'm going to stop reading now. Okay. But the problem being, of course, that in the background of all of that is, but the Catholic Church was so evil for persecuting all of those witches.
Oh my gosh. It's just so tedious. It's just
she's more delicate than that, though, because Harkness, she places this one, the Shadow of Night, is placed is in the 16th century in 1590. And she has them in Elizabethan England. And you love this, because I've told you this. The vampire is Catholic.
Yeah. An English, and he's an English Catholic, or he's French,
He's
isn't he?
French, but
French Catholic,
he's
yeah.
living in England, and he's actually Catholic. And so the edginess of, being in Elizabethan England is that he could, be executed for heresy.
He's a spiritual bad boy.
He's a spiritual bad boy. So we love you. We love you, Professor Harkness, because you got that right. And so there's a lot of like mythologies behind all of this of saying, the Catholic Church was out there hunting witches. Well, the Malleus Maleficarum was in fact written by 2 Dominicans in Germany. So fair enough. But in the great witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries, it was the Protestants doing the hunting, not the Catholics. Specifically, for example, in Inquisition Spain, the Spanish Inquisition never did not go after witches because they knew it was nonsense.
People don't understand about the Spanish Inquisition is that the people were demanding to be tried in a church court because it was more fair.
Right. And one of the things they didn't do was make up believing in witches. The Spanish didn't. Yes. The German Protestants now, that they have and the English whatever. But these guys, these Dominicans, start with the problem of whether or not there is such a thing as sorcery, witchcraft. And it is this book that in fact invents it to a degree as a heresy, right? This is how they end up getting burnt, because they're being burned as heretics, not in fact as witches. And they're heretics because they have actually turned their worship to Satan from God, right? So that's why I was looking at it last week, because I was thinking about how can this help me with the definition of religion, because it's like right religion is directed towards God, and if it's not directed towards God, it ends up in certain places which are completely predictable, as we've been finding out, right? It's like, should all religions simply be equally allowed in our public sphere? It's like, well, the Satanic Temple, for example, which Putin has said, no, you can't have the Satanic Temple in Russia. Bigotry, bigot.
Oh, well, he knows what it's being used for. It's being used for subversion. There's a school district in Ohio that just has a Satan club now, because they swear an anonymous parent said, I want an alternative to the Christian religion. Just the whole thing just sounds made up. But they do this so that they can stop people from using even, a typewriter in school to type up a flyer saying, you're welcome to join us at our Christian club or our meeting or whatever. They're just trying to completely separate Christianity from any public spaces whatsoever. And that's why they do it. They don't care. They don't care about little kids. Well, we want a Satan club for little kids. It's for the kids. No, it isn't. It's for subversion. Putin knows this. He's not dumb. He's KGB. He knows what they do.
he knows how subversion works, right? He might even have studied the history of Inquisition, figuring that.
It'd be like saying somebody from the CIA has no idea they would be wanting to subvert. Really? No, go on. How does that work? Nobody's going to believe them.
Well, this being the problem, and then so we've got the layers of the problem are becoming clearer, right? It's like we have the tension between the women and men, the sexuality, that there is such a thing as actual subversion of right worship. This is why I wanted to bring up the witches in the discussion last week, because I was thinking, most of the time people now, they get trapped in worrying about, well, is everybody, if you're Muslim, does it matter? It's like, yes, we can do that, and yes, it is different, and yes, it makes a huge difference in the way you behave in the world, and therefore. Well, anyway, I needed an example of a religiosity that actually had the kind of effect that one would worry about, properly speaking, right? Okay, so everybody thinks of witchcraft now as the cool stuff that you get in the Discovery Witches series. It's All Souls trilogy, but for the television series, it's Discovery Witches. So, the Diana, eventually, when she learns how to use her magic, she has, the control of all the elements. And so there, these one, like the first time Matthew leaves her and she's worried that she's never going to see him again and stuff, like she ends up in a puddle, literally. She can't control her witch water. I'm like, Okay, the allegory here is a bit heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or she has the witch wind when she gets, so all of her magic originally is not under her control, which is clearly her emotional like responses to
EMS must be
stuff.
very dangerous around her.
Yeah, but he's a vampire, so you can always smell it, and I'm like, oh my god, no. Like, the man who knows your every heartbeat, right? It's like
I'm sure I'd like that
the
too.
level
What?
of wish fulfillment here is a bit powerful. It's like, but okay, so when she's sad, she ends up in a puddle, right? Because the water pours out of her. When she needs to protect him, she learns how to find her fires and her bow and arrow, so she's able to shoot the enemy and such like that. But the ultimate magic, which she gets, right, and in the second book, and is, I think, quite beautifully dramatized in the television series, is that she learns to like tie the threads of reality, right? And she
Oh
does this
yeah.
series of numerical knots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and she does 10 at the end, and it's like the making spell, and I'm like, oh, I'm all for that, right? That is this amazingly beautiful image of like what a historian actually is trying to do, because it's written by a historian, of tie together things, right? I can even do
Yes.
I love that knot making and stuff like this. Cool, right? How could you, as a Christian bigot, the Matthew's Catholic, so don't worry about that, but the vampires. So I don't think Harkness is actually falling into most of the traps that people do. But the sort of colloquial version of things is like, oh well, witches, we're in touch with the elements, and we just love Diana gets witch wind and witch fire and witch water,
And that's
witch earth,
congruent with a lot of
right?
people who think that they're witches today, that
Mm-hmm.
this is just being in tune with nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? And respecting nature.
It's nature religion. It's a bit, for in Christian terms, you're admiring the beauty of creation. Yay,
Right.
right? But whether or not we're drawing on the creatures for power, it's like, well, technology does that, right? This is the
Mm,
big sort of magic versus technology sort of
right.
debate,
Witch,
right?
witch versus wizard.
Witch versus
Right.
wizard, right? So it's like you're doing the arts. Oh, I think my husband's home. Hello. He didn't get the milk. Anyway, um and the Diana in this story ends up with this wonderful ability to, I mean, it's binding, right? I think the base image
Hmm.
of this knot making is binding, which is in fact in ancient magic one of the things that magic does. You can bind and loose, which interestingly is the power given to Peter.
Right. I was just going to say that's Christian. Right.
So now it's kind of, it's like, how many worlds do we live in of imagination, right? It's like, is there the reality of the Christian versus this magical
Well,
alternate,
people
or
want the power, but they don't want the responsibility. It's like the
mm,
cat lady. What I'm thinking is the reason many single cat ladies for Harris, because of the abortion issue. These women want children, but they don't want the responsibility for it, so they get a cat, which needs very little attention. When you leave for the day, it takes care of itself.
yeah,
This dogs aren't like that. I mean, you can't really leave a dog for a day. I mean, you can, but they'll probably chew through half of your furniture and shoes. They don't like it.
right.
It's very different. It's a very different personality that will be attracted to one to the other. You know, that's not to say everybody that likes cats likes abortion. That's not what I'm saying. That would be ridiculous. But there is a there is something unique about taking care of a cat, having something to cuddle, but you don't have to give it too much attention,
Hmm.
right? You don't have to give it all of your attention. You could leave it for a couple of days and come back, right?
Yeah, you
So
could, right, you would, the dog goes with you on the family trip. The cat, you can,
yep,
right. Yeah.
give them
We
enough
we
water and
actually have
food,
a
be fine.
question. Danielle Bethune, Professor, have you watched the Mayfair Witches, and what were your thoughts on it? I actually like that one. I don't like Discovery at all. I haven't watched Mayfair Witches.
That sounds familiar.
I was
Favorite
watching
witches.
Discovery because I'd read Harkness' book on John Dee for our research. I actually, to be fair, I'd read the Discovery, which is the first one, some years ago, and it's a small enough academic world that one of my friends is friends with her, right? So it's like I professional curiosity. What can I do with my skills? Um, I have other criticisms of Discovery as a storytelling exercise in both the books and the movies. But right now, we're just thinking about the appeal that the relationship has of the way the vampire witch is described, and the sort of attraction that image seems to have for so many women now, the ones voting for Harris, right? Of the single women who, or the women who want to make sure that their daughters have access to abortion. It's like, please, what?
That is the weirdest flex ever. God.
Right? Yes, I want my daughter to have access to abortion that I didn't have, and you're like, what?
So are you trying to tell me something, Mom? Right.
Oh, goody, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but so I thought I had not, I carried around it. I've got a lot of books that I've carried around for many, many years. And some of them I actually, like back in college, I did like frequent the same witchcraft tarot crystal shop off campus, right? It was like literally right off campus, that
Yeah.
Marianne Williamson, the other witch in political life.
Is she an actual witch?
Sort of, wasn't
Mary
she?
Williams?
Wasn't she?
I don't know.
Well, in one of the profiles for her when she was running for president back in the day, she was one of the
Well,
candidates.
she just ran this time.
Did she run
too.
this time? Okay,
She
so
was on
she's
the ballot.
okay.
Yeah.
There you go. So she's a little older than me and was going to that same bookstore I was, so I know where she shopped.
Oh.
I'm still carrying around books on tarot and theosophy and Uspensky and stuff like that. I've got
I don't know what that is.
I've got it's like some more of the Russian like mysticism stuff. I've got at least the library cred for saying that. I've thought about this for a long time. I've studied. I've read. There's a good literature in medieval magic, and I've done a course with my colleague Richard Kieckeffer. He actually studies like the histories of magic books and things. He did an edition of one of them. And okay, so but I hadn't looked at the Malleus Maleficarum properly. And of course, if you've know its internet reputation, it has the funny pictures that come out of it that have the women with the penis trees.
The what?
That there's one of the things that the witches apparently can do, and they mention it, right, is
I want to know why.
well, they can create the illusion that men have lost their member, right? So
so they collect them?
and then apparently in one story that they have a tree. It's meant to be a joke, right? It's like
Okay.
the where's the priest, and his is like the biggest or the smallest or something like that. You can go get it out of the tree, and it's like, is this dildos or is it
Yeah.
what is this, right? Is it an elaborate
yeah.
joke that the Dominican that wrote this down didn't get, or something, right? And you think, okay, so it must be, if that is in fact what this book is full of, it's silly men misunderstanding body jokes that the women are telling, right?
Or somebody feeding them information saying, yeah, and they do this too.
Right.
Write it down.
So I thought
Monty Python sketch.
Yes, exactly. I thought looking at this would be like great material for having a conversation with Milo, don't you think? Because if I can shock him, right? It's like
I don't think you could shock him. She's like, ooh, it sounds like a challenge.
oh, let's see, right? No, seriously, come on. He had don't want to go into that. He had that bet with Nick. He claims that they're pregnancies. I doubt it, right? No,
Yeah.
I don't have any backstory on that, but right, okay, so women, ladies, we talk about all sorts of, and this then I wonder, right, it's like, what do women talk about when there's just women around and there's no men around? Do we I don't know, because I'm not one of those women that seems to have those conversations that just women have together. I don't do we, right? What do we talk about? It's fencers, the main thing they'll be worrying about is bleeding on your whites, which the women of my age don't have to worry about anymore. So there you go. I could be old and horrible. I I am. It's like the hormonal lack is actually interesting. You get to be like unself-conscious about all sorts of things that used to matter, but that can't anymore, like
Yeah.
fertility. Anyway,
Anyway,
don't you want to know what else I learned in the Malleus Maleficarum that witches do?
is it going to be weirder than a penis tree?
No, unfortunately, it's going to be much plainer.
Then yes, let's.
Question 11, that in various ways midwife sorceresses kill the fetuses in the womb and cause miscarriages. And
Ah.
when they do not do this, they offer the newborns to demons.
Hmm.
They do that. The men losing their members seems to be okay. So it does seem like maybe they can change them into animals, but that's kind of interesting. People could change them into animals. Question 9, whether sorcerers work on male members, that means their penises, through the illusion of conjuring as if these limbs were completely pulled out of the body. Okay, so this means, it's like they're giving the illusion of these guys being castrated, but it's apparently an illusion and they're not actually castrating men. Hard to say, right? But so
Yeah.
we've got abortion, castration, and what could possibly be worse? Question 8, whether...
These are themes running through our politics right now.
Fancy that. Whether sorceresses can impede the faculty to procreate, which is the kind of sorcery mentioned in the bull, the papal bull. Contraception, castration, causing impotence, abortion.
Mm-hmm.
No fancy like weaving threads of the histories and stuff like that. I'm so disappointed. That's literally all. I haven't.
Yeah.
To be fair, I haven't read the entire book, but it's also much drier than you imagine because it's in scholastic sort of in Quaestio format, right? But
Yeah.
claiming questions whether claiming sorcerers exist as Catholic, whether it's Catholic they had to think they have demons, whether the origins of sorcerers. But the main things that the questions deal with that they have the power to do is contraception, illusions of castration, okay, turning people into beasts, but all right, cat ladies, right?
Yeah.
Abortions, miscarriages, and then the there are examples in all the stories of those same things, right? And then the latter part of the book is how to question them, but
it's mostly women pushing for transing children. It's mostly the mothers doing this.
now,
And
yeah,
yes, and clamoring for abortion and clamoring for birth control, which isn't really an issue anymore because that was done 56 years ago. It was the year I was born. That was made broadly legal for married and unmarried couples.
well, I'm starting to get the sort of context for why the Catholic Church was clearer about the fact that these were problems.
Yeah.
So the Malleus, it's interest. It means hammer, right? Malleus. The real concern for witches was this comes out in the late 15th century. It's printed in 1485. It's 1485. 1485 or 6, right? So it's a printed book. It's late enough that it's a printed book. It's moderately well known through the 16th and 17th centuries, and then the witch craze kind of goes away after the 16th century. And I've been wondering about it as like why then and why these concerns, right? That fertility is the major concern. That seems, and they cause infertility in animals too, or apparently they can affect the land and such. But the major concern seems to be that they're stopping, they're causing couples not to be able to have children.
Could this have been anxiety due to the massive loss of life because of war and plague during those centuries?
So the plague is very old, old news by this time. It's 130 years ago that they had the Black Death, and for the most part, the new waves of plague. When they understand plague, it tends to affect children worse by this time,
Mm.
not the adults so much, because the adults that survive.
Hmm.
So no, it doesn't seem to be specifically plague. And this is long before like the worst war. This is in Germany. It's the reports come from like Switzerland a lot, and it seems to be tied up with concerns they had with heretics in those regions that were anti-clerical in different ways. Again, side note, we can talk about that some other time. But this isn't the period in which there are terrible wars yet in Germany. I mean, there'll be peasant revolts in 1525 in some of this area, which is bad, right? The peasant revolts, the Lutheran peasant revolts, are really, really devastating. And then 100 years later, the 30 Years' War, but not necessarily, right? It's almost like it fits our McLuhanisms about, change in, it's a printed book, right? It's in this moment of big transition in something. And that the anxiety they get is over fertility is, I was like then fascinated, because of course that's a huge thing that we're worrying about right now, right? We're watching,
Yes.
one, that all of these, single women who are, I mean, allegedly, it's hard to tell on social media how widespread these things are, but the women who are sad about Trump's being elected having themselves sterilized, right? It's like, this is really,
Yeah.
it's what kind of anxiety over sexuality is at stake here, and what kinds of stories have women been fed that, I mean, on the one hand, we have this highly, quite literally, romantic vision of
Mm.
witchcraft, right? With the reality that this ancient witchcraft was mainly about sexuality as like causing infertility, and we are now, very interestingly, in our lifetime, a period of heightened anxiety over being able to stop fertility. The parallels are
Being able
fascinating.
to, it's yeah, either being able to stop it or not being able to start it, right? There's quite a lot of anxiety out there where women can't get pregnant, or they can't get pregnant more than once,
Right,
you know.
right, right.
Uh, it's just a general anxiety over fertility, both in both directions. Worried about trying to stop it or not being able to start it, you
Yeah.
know. And that might be that some of that might be a propaganda manufactured by pharmaceutical companies that, and fertility technology companies that want to sell women on the idea of freezing eggs and doing ridiculous things like that.
Well,
But
in the 15th century, it's all straight up witchcraft.
yeah, well,
Which is, it's very interesting. And so the one thing that Harkness uses in the discovery, in the first book, the friend, housekeeper of Matthew's mother gives her a special tea that she says she has to drink every day. And then when she finds her aunt, says, why are you taking contraceptives? And she's like, what? Right.
oh,
So, I mean, I think that's probably an actual, it is true that there are contraceptive recipes, I guess, that we know.
mhm. But they're probably just early abortifacients, right?
I think, yeah,
I
some of them
suppose
are.
yeah.
I mean, the recipe's in there. It's got 12 different plants that you have to make sure to
Hmm.
take it daily. But I am, the parallels were very striking and very interesting. And then you had been talking. So this is the episode that we promised to have a month ago.
2 months ago when I first got sick.
Well, no, yeah, but we were going to do this for All Saints, All Souls Day,
Oh,
or All
that's right.
Saints
You
Day,
were.
right? It's like
Yeah.
these
Hmm.
saintly women, but it's like we had to give you the witches first, right? That
Yeah.
the why have women now been so convinced that fertility is something to be avoided? What is that about? I mean, in the Malleus Maleficarum, that it's mainly distress, it seems. Although it does seem like I need to read it more carefully, because there are other stories of, women are able to get pregnant with one man, or able to have sex with one man but not with another, or he's able to do it with one woman and not with another. I mean, there's clearly a lot of like very interesting, sort of
Mm.
sociology of sexual behavior hidden in the
Mm-hmm.
penis tree stories
Mm-hmm.
of what was actually going on in these different town
Yeah.
populations. But the anxieties over but the anxiety that we have now over sexuality, it parallels but different. And you had
Mm.
been talking, I think, around the election, right? Because everything was coming up about how, the women wanted to be able to have abortions and that they were
Yeah.
being told stories about why they would need to have abortions. And you said, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I have examples.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just something people want to control. Feminists love saying people want to control women's bodies. It's like, but they're already controlling your body because they're just scaring you into getting abortions, and they're scaring you into not
Mm,
having children or not having more than one or two, and they're scaring you into, not getting married,
right.
before the age of 30 or 40. It's there are different ways of controlling people,
Mm-hmm.
and you could just be subjected to a massive psychological operation, which we have been. People think it started, when the birth control pill was made legal for unmarried couples in the late 1960s.
Mm,
But, it was 1920 in Lambeth, England, where the Anglican Church itself said, "Oh, it's perfectly fine for married couples to use contraception,"
mm-hmm.
and now it's perfectly fine to abort your children.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't a oh, how do they put it? What do they call it? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm blanking on the expression right now, but it's not something that happened gradually. It happened very quickly.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, so clearly the sort of concept of all of this has been around for a while. I mean, contraception and
Slippery
abortion,
slope.
yeah,
Sorry.
contraception and abortion, yes, abortion are known to have been things that the church opposed in antiquity.
In
And
the first century.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting that the main thing that the witches are accused of doing, it's hard to tell whether it's a fantasy or not. A lot of that is like certainly the witches the mass with the devil and things like that, but worrying about whether or not women are using contraceptions or whether they're inducing abortions and miscarriages
Yeah.
seems to be it seems like that could have likely been a real thing, right? That people
Yeah.
were actually worried about it. And
Yeah, well, yeah, people, yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of innocent women accused, but I'm sure there were a lot of guilty women that got away with it too, on
right.
the other hand, because they were potions. The first century, yeah, a prohibition against abortion mentions potions.
Hmm.
These weren't surgical things. They were poison.
Well, like
You
the
basically
pills
poisoned
now,
yourself.
right? It's like the pill
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
right? We've
Yep.
congratulations, we've achieved the Middle Ages again.
Did we ever leave them?
No.
Right. Yeah. The Enlightenment made you think you did, but
Yes, but here, take this medicine so that you
right.
miscarry.
Yeah. You did deviate. You did deviate a bit because your art got uglier, but yeah, and your education got poorer.
Well, we said
But you're still using the same pharmaceuticals for the same reasons.
yes.
Yeah.
So how do we talk people out of it? You had some examples. We have some. I think this is you and your grandmother. Your mom and your grandmother.
That's my mom and my grandmother.
Okay.
My grandmother was a single mom. And so, yeah, she passed away in 2013. She was 84 years old, but she got pregnant when she was 15.
Mm,
And I'm not going to give too many details because even though she's passed away 11 years ago, I want to protect her privacy a bit. But being a 15-year-old, you were considered to be in trouble, right?
right.
Girl got herself in trouble. Abortion was available then. It wasn't legal. It was still available. This was New York State. She was probably a big target for them
So
because she was
when was this exactly then?
this was 1946.
1946. Okay.
1945, when she got pregnant. My mother was born in
46.
1946.
Okay.
And she definitely would have been targeted by Planned Parenthood for help, right? But I don't think there was ever any question that she was going to, keep my mom. She didn't even give her up for adoption.
Right.
She loved her, and she had her, and my great grandmother helped to support her until she got married. She did get married, and she had 5 more children.
Wow.
5 aunts and uncles,
Oh.
and yeah, and this I don't think there's any question that she loved her child,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it hindered her in anything. She just went on and lived her life. Nothing horrible happened to her because she got pregnant at 15
Mm-hmm.
or because she gave birth at 16, even in 1946. Now, my mother did not know this until she herself turned 16 and she needed to get a work permit.
Hmm.
And then she found out that her father was actually her stepfather. But because that's just the way it was done back then, I don't even think she was formally adopted. That wasn't done either. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you have a kid. Oh, it's my kid now, And
Right.
we're gonna get married and have five more. That was very typical. So it was typical that young girls would sometimes get pregnant and they would have their babies and they would live their lives and it wasn't the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even like 40 years later, I can remember, girls in high school getting pregnant and this attitude of, oh, her life is over. And my parents' generation was still around. And I used to get
Right.
so angry, even at the age of 60 myself. I'm like, your life is not over. A baby does not mean your life is over. It just means you get tired for a little while. You can still do things.
Yeah.
And and my grandmother was one of those. And she had six children altogether, and 10 grandchildren, and five great grandchildren, and that is quite a pyramid.
Yes.
You know,
Well, I'm
that's quite a
certainly
pyramid of people.
feeling the lack of those pyramids in my family, right? It's like my parents' generation all seem to have three kids, right? I have a lot of sets of cousins in threes, right? And we're not having that many. and
No,
and
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 it's
it's
very
just like, yeah,
lonely.
it's it feels very lonely. I mean, if
It is very
it
lonely.
feels like, well, I mean, what it must be even worse in China, right, where you have absolutely no cousins.
No, no, correct. And in Japan,
Yeah.
I met the sweetest lady. When I had my baby at when I was 40, which was old. I was like the oldest person in my family to have a baby. But 40
You were
years
not
old, and
following
I
in
remember
family tradition, clearly.
no, no, and my husband and I were on a short weekend vacation up in Vancouver in Canada. And there was some Japanese tourists there that were older, like in their 70s,
Mm.
and they didn't speak a word of English, but they were like, and they
Baby,
were
baby,
just
baby. Yeah,
baby,
yeah.
baby, baby, and they asked him, and they picked him up, and they were looking at him and cooing over him. It's the cutest thing I ever saw. And then again, another friend, I went to her. She had an au pair who married an American man, and so they were in their 20s, and they were having a baby. And her mother came over from Japan, and same thing. She saw my son. She's like, she couldn't speak a word of English. She couldn't wait to hold a baby. She was actually one of eight children,
Mm.
and she only had two or three of her own. And so, yeah, and same thing in Japan, same thing in China. Long time ago, these people stopped having larger families, and now America's going through that.
Yeah.
I think it took us longer, which is odd, but it is a very lonely thing. I can see myself doing the same thing. Even now. Oh, a baby somewhere. I go
Anywhere,
nuts when I
right?
see
I
one.
would
Yeah,
go to Cantius as much as anything because there's like sets of kids,
yeah,
right?
it's awesome. It's really
And they'll
awesome.
be the babies at mass, and they're just I'm just like you're here for our Lord. No, there's a baby. It's-
Yes, yeah, but baby,
but baby,
he
right? And oh
understands.
my gosh, they're so beautiful,
Yeah.
and I wonder about the work that it took to kill that response in people. It's like, how can you not see a child and just be? I mean, I don't like.
I
What's interesting, the older I get, the more like everybody's babies are cute, right? When I was younger, I was more
yeah,
selective. You don't have to like absolutely everybody's children to like,
yeah,
children, but this
yeah,
feeling of how do we end up hating children? Who hates children? It's like it's straight up from the Roald Dahl. I mean, the movie is quite powerful, right? Where
well,
the witches went to like kill the children. Like Malleus
yeah,
Maleficarum,
well,
that's actually accurate. That's what they wanted to do.
yeah. I think it's misplaced. I think it's misplaced anger. I think when people are angry at themselves, they're angry at the men that didn't marry them,
Mm-hmm.
or that weren't interested in them, and they're not going to accept that. So it's really just a misdirected anger, I think. or it's suppression. This is, I love my cat's my baby. I have seen people pushing their animals in little baby
Oh yeah.
carriages. I've seen them. That's weird. What was weirder was somebody had it in one of those little pouches that you carry babies in. And I went to go, oh, a baby, and it was a dog. And I
Yes.
was
Oh,
like,
I've seen
you've
loads of
got to be
those.
kidding
No,
me.
people, it's like with
Yeah.
their pets and the, costumes for pets. And it's like, okay, so no,
Oh,
turning
a baby
okay, so
carrier.
yeah,
A papoose for your dog.
oh, come on. Surely you've seen the corgis in
Are you
backpacks.
nursing
Come
it?
on. The corgis in backpacks, they're adorable.
Well, this one's a sling where the dog's in the front.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Okay, clearly I live in a big
it's
enough city that all of this is normal to me now. Maybe this is where the witch is turning people into animals. See, come from. It's-
or they can't tell the difference. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's misdirected anger and disappointment. And when you have you have a movement that says, oh no, you can be powerful, it's powerful. Women are powerful. Yeah, you're gonna start doing strange things to quiet your conscience or quiet your needs that aren't being met, or your
yeah.
desires. But because that's lonely too. It's one thing to be an older woman who's never had children, and you've accepted that, and you still love children. You're like, oh, that's disappointed, but life is still good. I can do other things. It's a whole nother thing when you realize you're old and childless because of something you did or didn't do, and you made a conscious decision to do this. That's going to be really hard to live with, I think. And that's some of the quotes that I picked up. One of big one from Maya Angelou. She says, "Never once regretted this. Never ever once
Well, okay, so
did regret having this
one
baby."
of the things that you wanted to show us in the stories that you have here is this claim that all of this is new, right? And with your grandmother's example, it clearly isn't. And to say
No.
Margaret Sanger was very active. I mean, the odd bits
Yeah.
of knowledge I have from things that I did in college, and then Avita Duffy, our friend from last spring, right? She was on everybody listen to Avita's show. She's doing some really great work on her Bongino early edition. Avita did a paper on Margaret Sanger, and I had done some study of Margaret Sanger when I was younger myself. And Sanger was out there in the 20s, right? But trying to, I mean, her thing was the earliest thing they had the problem with was the Comstock laws that you couldn't send obscenities through the mail. Consider now that we can't get obscenities off the internet, but then the law then was you couldn't send obscene publications through the post, and birth control information was considered obscenities, and her big thing was getting arrested for trying to hand out literature on contraception. And she certainly was, I mean, active in New York. Your grandmother's lucky. Your mom's lucky she was born. You're right.
Yes, she is. She is lucky she was born. Yeah. My grandmother was one of 8 children, 7 living. Their oldest sister died when she was just 2. And when she got pregnant, her father and all 3 of her brothers were away at war. So there were no men in the house. If there had been, probably wouldn't have happened.
That she wouldn't have gotten pregnant because
because she would have had her brothers looking out for her. I met them. They would have looked out for her. They were very tough men, but they weren't around. They couldn't be around. So
1945.
She was. Yep. Yeah, she's a Staten Island girl.
That's an interesting thought that I hadn't. I don't want to just go off on this tangent, but concerns with whether or not the women are taken care of by their menfolk. It's certainly something I think on, because with divorce, divorce means your father's not around when you're. In my experience, right? Your father's not around when you're growing up, and he can't do my favorite movie of all time. I think the more I think about it is Clueless. One, because it's based on Jane Austen's Emma, right? So it has the Jane Austen vibe, and we have on the one hand, Cher standing up for herself when she's being teased about being a virgin, and she's saying You know, I use this line because I've liked how like assertive it is. She's like, you've seen how picky I am about my shoes, and they only go on my feet, right? I'm not going to just have sex with anybody,
Yeah.
right? It's like, yes,
Yeah.
be picky, right? That's a good to
Correct.
be
That is
very
the
that's a
correct attitude.
correct attitude. And then when Christian, who we find out is gay, of course, so that's never going to happen, but he shows up to pick her up on a date, and her dad's like, I have 45 and a shovel. No one would miss you. You take care of my
Yeah.
daughter, right? So that feeling that, I think you're saying about the anger, right? Is that the anger of the men who don't end up marrying you or taking care of your child in the way they're supposed to. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I think one of the things that's clearly in the background, a lot of the witches' concerns is there are cases in the Malleus that are clearly domestic violence. And so that
Mm.
is like a trauma. Like, how do you
Yeah.
take care of women? Well, dads, brothers, uncles, where are the men? Because the men need to be taking care of the women so that the women are safe, and it's not just their husbands, right? This sort of that we've stripped it down to saying that husbands are the ones solely responsible for all these relationships. They're not. It's the whole network of.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
sound like the
Hey,
Godfather
a lot
scene.
of a lot of the women are raised with this attitude from their own mothers who were divorced
Hmm.
too. They're angry, bitter divorcees. That's not just a stereotype. That's a real
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, they're angry
It's
at their
not,
husbands, and
this Hollywood idea that we're consciously uncoupling. Oh, shut up. Divorce is never fun for anybody, least of all the
yeah,
kids. And they get raised with it, at least their mother's anxiety, or if not outright anger over the way things turned out.
right.
Even if it's not directed at her husband, it's going to be directed at relationships in general. At least even on a subconscious level, the kids are going to pick it
Right.
up. I mean, they were very attuned to the way their mom is because they love their mom and they're very close to them when they're young. So yes, it is going to affect them, and that might go way towards explaining why women are so angry.
Generally
The
now,
a
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
a type of woman is so angry, and why she might be attracted to something that promises her power.
It was our vampire witch fantasy. I mean, I'm fascinated by this
Yeah.
because, in fact, Harkness, according to the public media that is available, is married to a woman, right? And so, whatever layer, I mean, she's an older woman who's also a historian of science. Um,
Mm.
it's a perfect witch relationship, right? Two powerful scholarly women. Um, but the fantasy is of this man, and it's very interesting the way she's drawn this vampire, right? That he is like he's setting wolves too, of course, because evolution comes into it, and he's fiercely protective, like the wolf of his pack, and once he's decided that
Oh,
he's mated with Diana even before they've had sex, he's going to like kill to protect her, and I'm like, whoa, talk. The
yeah,
waves of fantasy rolling off of this
yeah.
are
It's like,
are like wolf scent, right?
yeah, yes,
I
yes, this is
I
what we
think
want.
I think I get it, right? There's this
Yeah,
desperate please take care of me, which is interesting.
yeah,
And of course Diana and the character, she's never afraid of him. She's never worried that he's going to rip her throat out, because he could, and he's always worrying that he might. And I mean, in that sense, the sexual tension stuff is very well allegorized.
hmm,
But I mean, on the one hand, it's real, and on the other hand, I mean, there's some very sad videos that I've seen on the internet of like this one woman naked in an airport screaming for someone to have sex with her. It's bad, right? I mean, she's literally
oh,
completely naked.
yeah. I think that's bad. I think that's probably bath salts. That seems
Uh,
to be a thing with that particular drug.
well, but
They strip their clothes off because they get too hot.
how did she get to the airport? Right? It's like Costa Rica or something. It's like,
I don't
what are you
know.
doing in the airport? Okay, one, sexuality is clearly intensely and dangerously powerful, which somehow we, on the one hand, minimize as oh yeah,
Mm,
it's going to be sexy and cool and porn and stuff like that. It's like it's literally the most powerful force in the universe because it makes more people.
right. It's the power of creation itself.
It's going to
That's pretty
be. It's
powerful.
going to be. I mean, it's like just like all the witchcraft stuff that's like sacrificing babies and stuff. It's like, do you understand? That's like the tip of the power, which is life. Which again, Harkness is actually pretty good
Yeah.
at. With they want life. The witches and vampires and demons want to have babies together. It's the best, like the best fantasy in all of this is that they want to have children. It's very
Yeah.
Catholic. It's very nice.
Yeah.
We would prove.
Despite all the difficulties, right,
Right. All the
allegorized here,
difficulties
they
allegorized.
still want children.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So how did we? So we have your next. We have Loretta Young.
Oh yeah. Her story is really interesting because that's two generations of women who almost weren't there. Right. Because when Loretta Young was very little, they lived in Utah and her father left the family and there were three children. There was a brother and two sisters. And when Loretta's the youngest, and when her mother was pregnant, the doctor suggested aborting her because, well, you're poor. She's like, see ya. Picked up the family, moved to California, where I think she knew people and could get some
Right.
work, right? And Loretta and her sister started acting at a very young age, and so she had always been in movies, and she eventually went on to win three Emmys and an Oscar, and she worked with all these very famous stars. And when she had a very, very short marriage when she was a teenager, and her mother got it annulled because she was underage. And she was working with Clark Gable, and Clark Gable date raped her. And she didn't know it was date rape until she was an older woman. She heard this term and she heard it described. She goes, that's actually what happened to me.
Wow.
I thought it was my fault, right? And indeed, Clark Gable had said, well, you were married. I thought you knew how to take care of it, right? When she told him she was pregnant.
Take care of it.
So
yeah. So this is
right.
So one of the things I think about is you watch enough of the older movies, you realize they're feeding this constantly, right? The actresses themselves were kept slender, right?
Sometimes with amphetamines, like poor Judy Garland, right? Her own mother put her on those. But we're talking about a good mother right now. Not a
no,
bad
but I mean,
one.
It's in the plot in the movies a lot, right? That there's when we did the Hays Code Hustle, and I've been sick, and I've been watching all those rom-coms thinking I was going to get wholesome movies, and it turned out no, they weren't, right? They were all these seduction fantasy, it's like, wait a minute.
Oh, and the propaganda. Yeah, underlying it all. For women.
Constantly. Yeah. So she says, be careful, be very careful. Abortion is wrong to start with, but in addition, you don't know who or what you are aborting.
That's right. You don't know. You don't know what it's powerful magic creation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't mess with it. And so when she was pregnant, her mother, a super mom, there's a couple of super moms here, I got to say. And I think my great grandmother was one of them too. But that's another story for off camera. But so Loretta Young's mother, when she found out her daughter was pregnant, took her to Europe because she was afraid the studio was going to pressure her into getting an abortion. She knew it because she'd already been through it herself. Right. And she knew how bad Hollywood was because her daughter's been acting very young and she watched them very, very closely. Right. And so she took her daughter to Europe because that's what you did back then, because it was easy to go to Europe and keep things quiet because you didn't have the kind of instant information you have today. Right. She wanted to protect her daughter's reputation so she could keep working. Right. And because she needed to keep working. She wasn't married, and I don't think either one of her daughters was married, or she wasn't then, and it was difficult. I don't think actors got a whole lot of money when they were very young, like back then, like they do now. There's lots of laws protecting them now. There weren't then. So she took her to Europe. She had her baby and put her in an orphanage, and then adopted her from the orphanage and came back with an adopted. She says,
I found this baby.
Daughter. Yeah, it was lovely. So she got to raise her own child and say, "Oh no, we've adopted her." Now, a lot of people in the know probably would have went wink, wink, right, and didn't say anything.
You really look rather alike. And why does it look like Clark Gable?
Yeah, her mom was smart.
Nice.
Her mom was smart. Yeah, and so she brought her back and she helped take care of her grandchild. And Loretta Young eventually married. Very devout Catholic family. Her sister actually married Ricardo Montalban, and they were married for over 60 years until one of them died.
Oh,
And I know he was a very devout Catholic
yes.
too. And so she actually got 3 Emmys um, for producing a television show that had like where there were fictions, like they were like short movies, right? Like 40, half an hour, 45-minute movies, but they all had kind of um, a spiritual
Oh, wow.
tone to
That's
them,
really,
right?
that's hope.
Yeah,
That's
and
very
actually,
hopeful. Okay, so one,
and I think she
the
was a,
whole,
I think she was an early. I want to say this. I think she was an early female producer in Hollywood
yeah.
too, which was really something because women didn't do that back then. Not a lot of it she did. She produced. I think she produced this show, and she was the one that controlled it. So
Well, okay,
good
so
for
all of
her.
these stories at
So
one, it's like, oh, I couldn't do this for my career, and she had a career, right?
she had a
Yeah,
career, and she didn't lose it, and her mom helped her. This is important. Mothers who help their daughters who get pregnant are very heroic.
yeah.
They are. They're tiger moms. This is the real tiger mom right
As opposed to
here.
the mother saying, "I want my daughter to be able to have an abortion." Yeah,
Right.
right.
That's right. This is the real power right here, and you're wielding it to protect your offspring and her
Yeah.
offspring, not kill them.
So another example. Here we go. Dorothy Day.
Ah, that's a sad one.
Mm,
I think she had a very sad life. She had a very sad young life. So she had a decent family. They weren't a religious family, but they were a Christian family. Her father carried the Bible around a lot and read from
mm,
it. And when she was, and they had moved around for work. She had moved to San Francisco with her family because her dad got, and she was from Brooklyn, and her dad was from Tennessee, oddly enough, and because his parents, and his parents met married in New York. They moved to San Francisco, to Oakland, but the building got destroyed in the 1906 earthquake, and so he lost his job. And so they moved around a bit. They wound up in Chicago, where she was very attracted to the Episcopalian Church, and she got baptized at the age of
mm.
13. And so she was always very spiritual, but she was also a very good writer. She was interested in the labor movement. She was even interested in the communist movement and the socialist movement because she had a very soft heart for working people. So her father always kept, he refused to have dime novels in the house. We always had lots of books. He had classic books. So she grew up reading those. And she also started reading, I'm going to kill myself over this. The guy who wrote The Jungle. I
Upton
can't remember his
Sinclair.
name. Thank you, Sinclair, and it was an S. Right. So she had started reading Upton Sinclair, and she got very interested in the labor
Hmm.
movement and the treatment of laborers. And she was a writer. And because she was hanging out with all of these kind of free thinking types and unionists, and she was kind of a bohemian, and she was living with a man. She loved him a lot. She got pregnant. He's like, I don't want it. It's me or the baby,
Mm.
and she chose him, and then he left.
Oh.
And that's not untypical even today.
Yeah, that she says, I got
You know,
pregnant. He said that if I had the baby, he would
yeah,
leave me. I wanted the baby, but I wanted Lionel more. So I had the abortion and I lost them
right,
both. I always had a
right,
great regret for my abortion.
right. And I had to get this from several different sources. So America Magazine, Altea online magazine, and also the Dorothy Day has a page for the American, the Catholic worker movement that she
Hmm.
started, which was a movement just to be in solidarity with people who found themselves on hard times or people who were fighting for the rights of working people, right? So a lot of people think she's a commie,
Mm.
right? She was sympathetic to communists and socialists and people who weren't. Yeah, and I mean, she protested and went to jail with Chavez in California. He was not a communist. He was the opposite of a communist. I think he was a Republican
Mm.
actually. But so she was a radical pacifist, and a lot of that had to do with her abortion, right? Which she deeply regretted. She she attempted suicide a couple of times. Um, thankfully it didn't succeed. She hung out with a lot of writer types who were also similar to depressed. And she meant, and what was mentioned in one of the articles I read was she knew Eugene
Hmm.
O'Neill in New York, and she said he was always sitting in the corner looking very sad. Which, if you've ever read Eugene O'Neill, you go, oh yeah, sure,
Yeah,
right?
choose your role models carefully, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. But then she fell in love again, and she lived with another man, and she got pregnant again. And he's like, I don't believe in marriage. I don't believe in religion. She was still attracted to Christianity, very
Hmm.
much so. She was in love with Jesus. She really was. And she had met a nun who had given her some things to read, and she had started going to church and wanted to going into catechism classes. And her man did not like this, and they fought a lot, and he left, and she took him back, and he left, she took him back. And I think he loved her a lot
Mm.
too. He just couldn't give up his ideology, and she wouldn't give up Jesus. And she said, I'm definitely not giving up this baby. She was thrilled to find out she was pregnant
Right.
again, right? And because she didn't think she could get, because the abortion she had was a bit later, it was like over 4 months.
Hmm.
And when that happens, and it wasn't a nice one. I won't read the
Hmm.
description. That very short description she gave in a personal conversation once, that somebody recounted years after her death. He was protecting her privacy. Um, she thought she was scarred too
Right.
badly to get
Right.
pregnant again, but she did, and she was thrilled, and she was in love with Jesus, and she was in love with this man, and she was in love with this baby. But the man kept leaving, and he kept coming back, and the third time she's like, no, you're out of here, we're done. I'm going to have this baby, and I'm going to become a Catholic. And she did, on the Feast of the Holy
Mm.
Innocents.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if that was, I
Yeah,
know, I don't know if that was on purpose,
probably.
but it was nice. Yeah. Yeah. And so she had her daughter baptized, and her daughter, when her daughter grew up, she got married and gave her lots of grandchildren, which is
Oh,
lovely, that she got to visit a lot,
right.
you know. But yeah, so she never spoke about her abortion. And people might wrongfully think that that's because she thought, just wanted people to leave it up to themselves. No, she really didn't. She hated it. Signed a petition against it after the Supreme Court forced it on the American people in
Mm.
1973. A month later, she says, no, this shouldn't be. And she signed a petition saying, get rid of it.
Hmm.
Um, she said to a friend, and again in a personal conversation, um, when she was asked to make a public statement against abortion, and she said, I don't want to push young people into their sin. I thought, that's a strange thing to think. And it's because a woman had said, I got an abortion because she did, right? And she's a
Oh,
good person,
oh, and so she didn't want to be an
right?
example of someone. Oh, look,
She
she's
didn't want to be a
okay.
bad
She's a
example,
Catholic. She had, yes. Oh, very
right?
good. It's good that she
Yeah.
understood that as a problem.
She did understand that. And I think she suffered for years because of that, because she knew how horrible it was. But because she was so public, had started this Catholic worker movement with a friend of
Hmm.
hers, um, that if she made public statements about it, it would be used against the children, and that she didn't want that.
Right.
And,
That's an
and so that must
interesting,
have
it's
been
like
very
backfire
painful.
on, like, wait, no, 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 it's not. I did
Yeah,
not want that.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. No, she hated it. She wanted it illegal. She was quiet because she didn't want it proliferating, and she was afraid that her bad example would be used for that.
My Angelou.
Oh, she's awesome. Yeah, her story's awesome. And another awesome mom she had. She had an awesome mom,
Well, it's
right?
I mean
So,
that good thread here that's like saying it's like yeah, if women are feeling abandoned, their mom, like not just we're the dads in all of the situation, which is also, like men need to be responsible, and that's one of the things that comes up the Malleus, right?
mm,
Men, it's like, will make your penises go away if you're not taking care of us. But the moms seem to like constantly be in here. It's because of the a few examples I have of people in my immediate world that I know had abortions. It's sometimes because the moms are forcing it on you. Oh,
yes,
you're not up for having a child. And I
that's
have heard
right.
that, right? It's like, oh well, it's better you didn't. I'm like, what do you mean? Like nobody's ready for a baby. They can't roll over when you get them. You change
No, and
it's like
also
that they
having a
you grow up with them.
having an abortion doesn't mean you were never pregnant or never had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you're the mother of a deceased baby.
But
That's
yes,
all it
and
means.
children that miscarry, those are great losses.
Hmm. For a lot of women.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So Maya Angelou, she said when she was 16, a boy she thought was cute and was interested in her said, "Oh, let's go have sex." And she said, "Okay." And then she said, "And when it was done, I thought, is that all there is to it? I'm not doing that again." Right? Just went so I was like, oh no. But she got pregnant, like because as happens when you're 16 and very fertile,
Right.
as most 16-year-olds
Yep.
are, right? And so she tried to hide it by wearing big blouses and everything as long as she could, and finally she couldn't hide it anymore, so she left a note on her stepfather's pillow saying, could you please tell my mom,
Mm.
I am pregnant. And her mom ran a boarding house, like they had like 14 boarders, I think, which is a lot. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work. And she said when her mom was done working, she asked, mom asked me to draw a bath. I guess that was one of her chores or something. So she did. And she goes, and then before she took her bath, she said, "Do you love this boy?" She said, "No, no, mom." "Does he love you?" "No." Says, "Well, there's no use ruining 3 lives. We're going to have this baby."
Oh, good mom. Yeah.
Great
There's
mom. And
yeah,
she
I
said, "My
like
mom
how
was a champion
many
mom."
different options that it's like the abortion stories are all the same and the life stories are all like various. Yeah.
Different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
options.
Yeah. And she said she was very poor for a long time. She and her son, she said they lived hand to mouth, but she wanted to try to make it on her own. Obviously, she did. She became poet laureate at some
Right.
point, I think under Clinton. And she does have beautiful poetry. It's very sweet to read. Um, but her mother said, "The door's always open. You come back anytime. Well, we'll help you." But she wanted to do it on her own, and she said she often worried about her son. But you should probably read that next
Okay.
quote. It's
Said
really
Guy
sweet.
had love and laughter and a lot of good reading and poetry as a child. Is Guy her son's name?
Guy's her
Okay.
son. Yeah.
Having my son brought out the best in me and enlarged my life. Then she says the best decision I ever made was keeping my baby.
Yep. Yep. And she said his life was filled with reading and poetry. I loved
Yeah.
that. Books and poetry. Yeah, that she was awesome. But yeah, you could just tell when she speaks about him, he was just the light of her life.
Right.
Loved it. And she was young. She was almost as young as my own grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
She was 17. My grandmother was 16. Yeah. So yes, it was common. And it was also common for moms to help their daughters when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. This came up in the conversation with Mark Lefebvre. It's like saying the intimacy crisis, which I think there's layers of like how one, pornography and contraception has made sex into this either addiction or nothing, right? It's like, oh, this thing that you can
Hmm.
have, and it's just, it's like going out to dinner or something. It's like it's that inconsequential, just a bit of pleasure.
Mm.
But that that what he seemed to be talking about was also just a loss of all sorts of human relationships that we have,
Yeah.
and so the intimacy of we've been stripped down into it's just it's the couple in the apartment and that's it, rather than that you're more properly in a whole network of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very isolating and it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. And I saw this one, my sister, when she was a stay-at-home mom, this was 20 something, 25 years
Mm.
ago, 30 years ago. Yeah, she was married in her 20s, but there were like no stay-at-home moms around.
Mm.
There weren't any, the people that she knew that lived in her neighborhood, they were older and their kids were grown, or but they were working, so, and it kind of tipped me off to how isolating that is.
Right.
And that wasn't the way it was when we were kids, my sister and I, in the
Not
70s.
yeah. We had the neighborhood and the
Almost all moms were stay-at-home
yeah.
moms. I mean, a few moms worked, my mom worked sometimes, some moms worked sometimes, but the norm was that the dad worked and the mom stayed at home. And this was true even of divorced and remarriages. The mom would still stay home. you stay home with all the
My
kids.
mom, I got to be
Here's
raised
my
by a single
nurse.
mom after my dad left, so we were one of those odd ones
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it did it. Yeah, it was there, but I think the majority it was the other way around. So by the time my sister was, staying home with her kids in the '90s, there weren't a whole lot of moms around doing that.
Right. No, and that it means, I mean, women do, even though, okay, so I'm glad I have you ladies, because otherwise I have this difficulty keeping women network stuff. I'm no good at it.
Me either. I'm not.
But most women really do need other women to hang out with.
Mm,
And it's interesting because the suburbs of the 50s, those are a peculiar and unusual time. I mean, that we
yeah.
ended up with them as this like quintessential like model. And it's like, no, as I think I said, I don't know which episodes I've said what. And um, prior to that, before all of the machines did all the housework, you would not be by yourself because you'd have servants. I mean, the
Oh,
room that I'm in here, I'm pointing to the room I'm sitting in right now in this apartment that we are in was built in the 1920s. This is the maid's room.
oh,
On
yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah. I had a house like that
this
too.
is just
Yeah,
an
we had a maid's room right
apartment
off the
building, though.
kitchen.
This is one of these six flats.
That's
Chicago is filled
amazing.
with six flats, and if there are four bedrooms like ours is, the back room is this teeny weeny little room,
I
and
just
it's
got a
called a
picture of
maid's
Mr. and
room.
Jeeves.
What? Yes.
I just got a picture of Mr. and Jeeves because he lived in an apartment in London, kind of like that
Exactly
same
like that.
era.
And so the
Yeah.
kitchen is right off this room because you'd have your own washroom, this little bedroom, and the maid, would be working in the kitchen, and then the family's part of the apartment is in the front.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, this sort of the isolated, talk about, never mind AI, right? The washing machine.
Yeah.
That and that the horror of all of those cartoons from the 50s when the smart houses start, everybody needs to watch those, right? Don't you remember when the robot house takes over? But I think that's a
I
projection of
remember
the
that one.
horror of a house that basically runs itself, and you have no more human
Yeah.
interactions or any human
Yeah.
knowledge about like how to take stains out of clothes and cool things like that happen in early 20th century
Oh, I
mystery
love
novelists,
YouTube for
right?
that though, because everybody's sharing,
Okay, so maybe
which
maybe
is
we're going to have a
awesome.
new world. I mean, we're going to recreate a new connected world of human beings, which will be great. But we're mourning
Yeah.
what, the tragedy of everybody having to live through these isolated
Yeah.
um
That's what was so cruel about, the home imprisonments, which I refuse to call lockdowns. They're home
right.
imprisonments that the
Yes.
governments put everybody
Right.
through, especially children. It was, well,
Yes.
I need to find a word that means super concentrated evil because that's what it
Mm-hmm.
was. It
Sorcery.
was
How's
sick. It was
that?
just, yeah, it was
Wizardry.
demonic
Demonic
sorcery.
sorcery.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it
Because,
bewitched
we're
everybody
already
into thinking that
isolated
they
and then
needed to
they
all.
they made it more
Yep.
so.
Yes, yes, everybody was
Sorry, go
already
ahead.
super isolated in the first place. I mean, thinking about just that popped into my head, all the kids that are willing to live in those pod arrangements so that they just have a bunk bed in a
Oh, in
pod. Yeah,
California.
but they're in a hall with other people.
Well, it's like the
It's like a
dorm, right?
dorm. No wonder
Yeah.
they're willing to live in a pod with other people. Like they're surrounded by, at least there's other people.
I wouldn't like to live in a
No, I
pod
wouldn't.
with other
I would.
people.
I no, but that's because we're old. Uh, you know,
No, I didn't like it when I was in college either. I didn't like, yeah, it's just too much.
I
Dorms.
realize I've almost never in my life lived by myself. I've had
Mm.
serial housemates or marriages.
Oh,
No, it's like
yeah.
I had a single room in college for like 8 months. That was it. Otherwise, I had
I had it.
roommates.
Yeah. I had a single room. Well, I had a single room, but we all shared a bathroom and a hall. So
Yeah,
it's like there were always people around. But
yeah.
at
I was on
my first year of
campus.
college, yeah, it was a suite. So I had a roommate and another room there was two people and then we shared a bath. There's four people sharing a bathroom, a suite. And I could do without that. Yeah. But I think it was only because I couldn't choose who my roommates were.
Well, there's that. But okay, so one, we have Robert somehow messaging and retracting. You're talking to yourself here. The Jetsons
Hmm.
kept the feel. We had Jetsons alongside Yabba Dabba Doo. You are the
Yeah,
farmer
the
or the
Jetsons.
farmed. Yes. Okay. Um, I
Rosie the robot.
I mean,
Yeah, the maid.
some of the appeal of college, I get it, right? If you're in dorm rooms, one, they should be all single sex. Get over this co-ed stuff because it's making people miserable. But the the appeal for the young is there, you're with other people, right? You're not living by yourself. And I think,
Oh yeah, no, I see the
yeah,
appeal. Yeah, I was unusual that way
yeah.
for sure.
I mean, for sure, that having
Yeah.
roommates and housemates and such, that human beings need to be living in groups, and the sort of isolated, oh, I got my own apartment. Who don't want that anyway? Okay, so we get, so the next example therefore we have is Roseanne.
Oh, she's another great
Yeah.
one. Actually, now I don't know if Roseanne's completely pro-life the way Loretta Young
Mm.
was, or obviously not, Dorothy Day, but she has an interesting story because she very much wanted to keep her baby. She got pregnant when she was 17. Her parents did not support her decision to keep this baby. This was in Salt Lake City, which is also where Loretta Young was born, funny enough. Um, but she was Jewish, and she was living in a very Mormon community because Salt Lake City is a very Mormon community. So, but she got pregnant. Her parents did not support this, and she said, "Well, I want to go off and live on my own." She went to Denver, and she got an apartment, and she said she turned on the water, and cockroaches came out. And she's like, "I'm not staying here." All right, and there were drunks outside the room, and she's like, "Forget this." So she went to the Salvation Army Home for Unwed
Mm.
Mothers, which they had back in the early 70s, because not every parent was a champion parent like Maya Angelou's
Right,
mom or Loretta Young's
right.
mom. Some of them said, "Get out. We don't want this." Right? I don't know if her parents said, "Get out." The interview she gave in People Magazine said they didn't support it. So she was,
This, I mean,
but in my
wrapping
head,
my head around
yeah,
not wanting your own grandchild is just like, I just can't,
they
I
didn't
can't.
they didn't want their daughter to be unmarried and pregnant, is my guess, because it's embarrassing, right?
Not wanting your own
Um,
grandchild. I mean, it's just like,
no, I don't get it either. So she went to the Home for Unwed Mothers, the Salvation Army ran, and she got in touch with Jewish Family Services. And because she's Jewish, and there were Jewish people that wanted to adopt Jewish
mm,
babies, because I'm guessing because you're not considered Jewish unless your mom's Jewish. So if there's a young Jewish girl that is having a baby and can't keep it, um, they have adoption services specifically for
mm.
that. Andrew Breitbart was adopted like that way too, and his sister,
Oh,
by through the same kind of thing. It was Jewish Family Services in Los Angeles, or something like that. So, but she very much wanted to keep her baby, and she had every intention of seeing her again. And it's a beautiful quote that she had there because it came true, and because she made sure it came true. She was forced to do it a year earlier than she wanted to, but she met her daughter.
wow.
It was just a beautiful thing.
Are they
Beautiful thing.
friends now?
I think so. Yeah. So yeah, they because she got famous with her show Roseanne. And so her daughter Brandy was born in
Hmm.
1971. And in 1987, before she turned 18, the paparazzi contacted her, said, "We've got your daughter's birth certificate." Ha 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 ha.
Oh,
Right?
wow. How did they find it?
Assholes. Okay.
Yeah, you've been watching
Anyway,
Roseanne, haven't you?
she said, I had already told my other children a year earlier that you have a sister and we're going to meet her in 2 years, because she had left a note with the
Oh,
family saying, "I intend to find my daughter
right.
and introduce myself."
But
Right? And
legally she couldn't say until she was 18. Is that the why would yeah.
probably that was probably the
Mm,
agreement that she made with the family services, right? But she had every intention of meeting her daughter again because she had always wanted to keep
right.
her. And she said it was just, when they did meet, it was just a wonderful
Oh,
reunion. They were both really, really happy and just hugged each other, and it was just what every adopted child probably
that's
dreams
really
of,
nice. Yeah.
right? Yeah. The funny thing about that is I heard her describing that was People Magazine I got that information from, but I saw her in an interview. Actually, it was probably in the magazine article too. But when her parents told her, says, "Well, your birth mom wants to meet you, and I just want to tell you in advance so you're not shocked. She's a very, very famous Jewish entertainer, right?" And she said, "Oh, it's a
Oh,
barstool."
wow. It's like
And then she says,
which mom are you
"No,
imagining?
I know." And she says, "No, it's Roseanne Barr." She said, "Is she Jewish?" Really? It's funny because if you watched her show, you would never stereotype her as Jewish because she was very blue
Right.
collar, right? So it was atypical Jewish, presentation of her life on the show, which was actually based on her real
Right.
life with her and her husband. But yeah, that was a sweet story. So yeah, no, she had her baby. Life didn't end. She has, like my grandmother, like lots of other people, had her ups and downs in
Mm-hmm.
life, but she had life.
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
life. You know, it doesn't end your life at all.
I'm thinking how lovely the difference of examples that you found are. And it's like they are the happiness is all various. And
Yeah.
yeah. So it in the the sort of claim that you can't, well, you wouldn't want to bring a child into this world for X, Y, or Z, right? It's like bring the
Yeah.
child into the world, right? It's like
Yeah, the child's already
yeah.
here. It's like you're not holding them like this, you're holding them like this, but the child is already
Right.
here. And the world has not ended. Remember that. The world goes on,
Yeah.
and the world goes on with your child in it. I can think it can only be a better place.
Yeah. So Robert finally didn't delete this one. As a father, I have to understand my personal removal from the mundane and take a role that gives rare insight at important moments. It's a solemn duty to be prepared to defeat lies. Okay, yes, there is a loneliness in it. Well, we'll have to get some dads on to do father episode.
That's a good idea
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they have a very different way of looking at their responsibilities as parents or potential parents
Oh,
even.
yes, definitely.
That's yeah.
Yeah, because this has all been very much the woman's story, which we did want to talk about because I think we had the men need a story, but I'm not sure for the most part. I mean, it's funny how much conversation there could be online and how flat it can all still be about the real issues that people are wrestling with. Like
Hmm.
the prime lie of women's health care means getting to kill your child, and the the sort of the drugs that are available now. So that indeed, I went to our Students for Life conference. The students invited me to they said, please come. And so I said, okay, I'll come. And one of the presentations was about what the effects of taking the pills, right? So not all abortions
Hmm.
are the scrapes, right? The
Right.
DNCs.
They're not all
They're not all
surgical.
surgical.
Yeah.
I think more of the abortions now that people are suffering are from taking the pills, and the deaths that one of the deaths that Harris tried to invoke is this woman bled out. It's like, yeah, that's from taking these pills.
It's from taking the pills,
It's
and
this
you need
horrible
yeah.
miscarriage, very very painful.
Part of what's going on there is that for years, the hospital industry and the OBGYN industry has referred to miscarriages as abortions
Hmm. Well, they are.
because
To
they want to
miscarriage is
because they
miscarriage is
right.
the abortion is an
But
induced miscarriage. Yeah.
right, abortion is an induced miscarriage. Well, it's not just an induced miscarriage. It's like an intention. Depending on how old your baby is, it's an intentional killing of, and then a removal of the
Right.
baby. So the pill would be an induced abortion, an induced
Hmm.
miscarriage, that kind of an abortion. That would be an abortion pill, right? But anything surgical, they go in and they kill the child first, and then they scrape it
Right.
out,
Yeah. No. And
and that's it.
we watched some. Well, we had
That's just what it is.
they had some videos. Well, one that if you see the cartoon videos of what it takes to cut the baby up and pull them out, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And then they have pictures of the body parts that have come out, and you're like, this is evil. I
Yeah,
don't. I'm horrified of my own for my own part that I didn't properly appreciate how completely evil it was until fairly recently.
they try to keep that information from people
Yeah.
because then they'll stop doing it,
Yeah, because
right?
then they'll
And
choose their children.
yep. And so there was a movie that called The Silent Scream that was done in the 80s, and it shows a surgical abortion, and it shows a baby trying to protect itself from the instruments, right? And people say, that's horrible. Who would take such a picture? Well, an abortionist took that picture. And when he saw it, he stopped being an abortionist. That was Bernard Nathanson. He was one of the people that got abortion legalized in New York State.
Yep.
He ran the largest abortion. He ran the largest abortion clinic in New York, most voluminous, 30,000, something like that. He might have been involved in himself, right? Including 2 of his own children.
Wow.
And I read his book. I read his autobiography, and it was surprisingly dry, right? But he said, people had asked him, what did you feel when you aborted your own children? He said, I'm telling you, I felt nothing but satisfaction for a job well done. That's all I felt. When I saw this picture, the reason we put a camera in there was because we were trying to make sure we could do it more efficiently and not nick the uterus of the woman, because that injures her and we wanted to reduce injury. So we did this because we cared about women. But when I saw that this was happening to the baby as it was happening, because that's what it took for him.
Yeah.
He had to see it as it was happening. Then he couldn't do it. He never did another one. And he eventually just shut his clinic. He became baptized. He was Jewish. He became baptized. And before he died, he became a Catholic. And a lot of that reason he became a Catholic is because they were one of the strongest voices, pro-life voices that there was. Right. And he had also married a Christian woman years earlier. And she was obviously praying for him pretty hard, you know. But that's how they got that picture. Anyway, so if anybody wants to cynically say, well, who's doing that? It's like somebody who had no problem with it until he saw it. That's who was doing that. And he was doing it to help women until he realized that this isn't helping them. This is killing a whole lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Our Lady.
Mm-hmm. That's a better thing to land on.
Well, it is the central mystery, and I mean, I'm glad that I'm glad we talked it through this way, because you get to this point, you say, just how did our Lord enter into the world? And that this,
like a gentleman,
like a gentleman, he asked this, but sent his messenger, sent his herald to you know, no Clark Gables here.
No.
But there's also that, I mean, obviously, since I read a lot of, you know, medieval meditations on the Annunciation, the Incarnation, and this, you know, the sort of what is the mystery of God's entry into the world. And you say, it's like, you know, that it's in that moment of conception, divinity entered into the world. And that is not to say that all souls are, you know, particles of the divine and things like that, but this astonishing how we've managed to lose that sense of how powerful the moment is of conception, which is what this with the Annunciation is, right? It's like meditating on the Annunciation is the one of the most represented images in all of art, right? So there's the Annunciation and the crucifixion. Okay, so the birth, you know, but it's the moment of and the angel said to her, "Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found grace with God. Behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus." And Mary said, "Behold, the handmaid of the Lord, let it be to me according to thy word." And the angel departed from her. Which is usually taken to mean is that at that moment, as the angel is speaking, and also, of course, they also meditate on this a lot in the Middle Ages. Like, God has already sent himself to her so that he arrives at the moment the angel does, because the angel is the messenger. And so I think in this picture that I have, it's you have the gold rays coming in and you know, the light fills her and she's conceived. But that in fact, every conception is that amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's ensoulment.
Yeah. And therefore, I do think it absolutely matters that we're Christian. And that there is this sense of the most astonishing moment of God's relationship with us is at that moment of conception, of life. The light, and it's like So I tried to explain this with Mark, and the weird things that you have the moment of realizing how absolutely precious the thing is. Because I think people take people for granted. Like particularly if you're in a city and there's a lot of us, right? That absolutely every one of us was conceived
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, and that there's no guarantee to it. There's like the I was talking to Mark about the puppies that died. We take dogs for granted. Talking about dogs, cats, and the dog people and the cat people. The dog people voted for Trump and
Yeah.
no abortion. Hopefully, right? That the puppies don't necessarily live just because they got conceived and are born. They all died in this first litter of the ones that I was wanting to adopt from. And so when the
Mm.
second litter came and they lived and I got to pick my dog, I'm like,
Oh,
and having a baby is infinitely more than that.
yeah. 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 Pure gift.
Yeah. I sort of wonder about that with the cat ladies and the no kids. Because the cats are alive. They like the cats because they're alive. It's no good just to surround yourself
Mhm.
with stuffed animals.
Not the same
It's,
thing.
life is not just a shape, right? Cat
Yeah.
shape, dog shape. It's something, this entry into. Why can't I say it out loud? I mean, it's like I realize poems are really good at this because you're trying to capture that
Mm.
moment of um what am I trying to think? It's the because you're also trying to worry about the going from um there not being a person to there is a person, right? It's somehow in that moment of conception now there's a person, and that we don't understand our own consciousness, but it's at that moment that everything that person's mind comes into being, right? That you
Yeah.
have,
That's
and
incredible.
there's going to be another mind born into the world.
Yes.
And even my dog I think is under my chair right now, right? And even animals, it's like we can the whole sort of our loss of our relationship with each other as human beings, talk about the intimacy crisis, but the loss of our sense of being around all the animals as well. I mean, in the
Hmm.
Malleus, in the Hammer of Witches, it's not just the human beings' fertility that they affect, but they also mean that the animals can't have more animals.
Right. Right. Which is
Yeah.
devastating because that's for, I mean, the animals in particular, that's not just food, it's wealth, prosperity.
Well, it's
You kill
everything.
that, you kill all of that.
And so we've lost, talk about the intimacy crisis. We've lost our animals, the households of our animals. We've lost all of our relationships with each other and different social. I mean, it's like we still have servants. You just like pay them by an Uber, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Or at the
Well, I
restaurant,
think
or
that,
it's like a service economy means a lot of people are still working as servants, which is what cities tended to
yeah.
have, domestic servants, personal servants and things
Hmm.
like that. So we're lying to ourselves about the kinds of relationships we're in. And when people like deliver, I always go down to I'm in an apartment building, but I go down to the door when the delivery people come because I'm like, a person has brought me something. I'm going to say thank you.
Yeah. That's nice.
I do like it. I'd say thank you very much. I mean, they got in their trucks and they brought the packages, and I thank
Yeah.
you for bringing me the package. You are doing me a service.
Yeah, that gets lost a lot. I think it's because so many people use so many services now. But yeah, when I was growing up, we were taught to be polite to the waitress that brings your food and to say thank
Yeah.
you. And occasionally we get my parents would get comments about how well behaved we were, and I thought that's weird. Doesn't everybody do this? But apparently not.
Well, but I think it's all of these, like, if to the degree to which we use each other for sex, right? Which is where the lack of
Mm,
intimacy has really gone, right? It's like, oh, you're going to use each other for pleasure, and then it's nothing, right?
yeah,
Everything else has fallen away from that, and that sense that the Malleus gives of the devil is making that they do all the rituals that everybody knows about, like kissing his butt and stuff like that. Um,
Mm.
You know, that where the diabolic in that is, of course, this breakdown of all of these relationships that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And that Christianity uniquely among all truth, you know, it's like all religions, right? We've got the truth, which is, this is our relationship with God in that moment of life. And he loves us so much. Not just he loves us so much, he sent his son. He loves us so much. This is how we enter into the world together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty wonderful thing when it's done correctly in a marriage.
Well, yeah, and if you can do it, you know, like really beautifully, that's great, right? But to I mean, what your examples of the women that you've talked about, because they recognize that it happened even in all of these other versions
That's
of
right.
the relationship. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Still make a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that meditation, we will attend to the whatever they're doing in Notre Dame tomorrow, whether simply celebrating Mass or
They're
reconsecrating,
ringing all the
ringing
bells
all the
across
bells.
our country, across the world. We're supposed to be
Oh,
ringing all the bells tomorrow, like 2 o'clock, I think, in this country.
be with the joy of Our Lady tomorrow in that
Yeah,
moment
that's cool.
of her conception. Ave Maria,
Yeah, and it's
gratia
going to be
plena.
it's going to be the 7th, so that's going to be the eve before
Her
the
conception.
Feast of the Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. See, this was good timing. Originally, it was supposed to be all
See,
Saints Day, but this
it's
is better.
I've thanks to my meditation last week on how if John Adams is talking about providence, he's talking about God. I've been thinking all sorts of things about, you know, the way God's providence is actually a real thing, right? And that things happen in the moment when they're supposed to. So one day Milo will show up. I'll get to have the conversation that I wanted to with him, but that the conversations that we're having now are the right ones, that we're being guided and shown the things that we need to be attending to. And so if it feels like we're in chaos now, everyone, we're still within God's providence.
Yep. Stop fighting it.
Yes. Okay. So I think that we've had an attentive audience. Mel saying Ave Maria, their heartbeat, hallelujah. Yes. Well, make sure that I haven't, if people been watching. Okay, Fat has put in the chat, Harkness's All Souls trilogy. Okay, so that's it. Okay.
Collecting books.
We have plans for another guest next week, and we'll talk about angels, hopefully, in science fiction. And
Ooh,
yes, so it's
fun.
Rob Crozy says he's
Oh, I just ordered those books. I know which ones
okay.
you're
So you
talking
need
about.
to be reading that, and
No, I haven't got them yet, but yeah.
the Mercury
I'll get some
books,
clues.
the Mercury Falls,
Mm-hmm.
they're very fun, and a lot of
Yeah, I
twisty
looked at.
stuff that goes on in the, it's time twisty stuff in the All Souls trilogy too, but of a different flavor, right? We have a wizard on next week, not witches. Okay, well that was, I feel much better now. I feel quite heartened by the stories of life and mothers. So strong women.
Yes, strong
Don't be
women.
witches. Don't
Strong
be
women help
witches. Be
women.
moms.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for joining us, everyone. See you next time.